Thank you and welcome back. I'm here with Bernard Cooper, who has an extraordinarily creative journey that has been going on and changing paths every, I don't know, how many years?
Decades.
Every few decades. But, so you started as, okay, these are the things I know. Revered writer, art critic for Los Angeles Magazine.
Right.
And now I just feel like I want to talk to you as a visual artist because I've known you, although I did read The Bill from My Father, Bernard's, but you guys have to read that. And the new one, My Avant-Garde Education, which it is. I find you inspiring because if you're creative, you're infinitely creative, and you can switch gears, and I feel like sometimes, like I tend to, maybe this is the Capricorn thing that Andrew was talking about, but I doggedly pursue something, and I run the risk of it not being fun anymore. And for me, switching that gear just made coming back to music more fresh. And I don't know if you ever plan to go back to writing. Knowing you, you probably will at some point.
I finished a piece of writing recently, but there have been various interests, all of which I've pursued doggedly. I think that is necessary. But my interests have taken me in different directions, and there's a kind of bias that a creative person is called to one art form and sticks with it, and often that's true. But I think one also has different interests, and you have to be open to where your interests lead you, and not be afraid to shift somewhat and try new things, and keep yourself challenged.
Well, you had said to me, which has stuck with me, and I think it's true, and might be the reason I'm doing this show and risking making a clown out of myself, but you said one has to risk being foolish.
Oh, absolutely.
To really pursue the excellence, like that without that risk of just trying something. Like if we're good at something and we keep doing that thing we're good at and it's just kind of a safe space, I think there's less room for growth in that sense. And when you said that to me, I was just like, that's true. Like I'm gonna try some things that are scary and that just kind of challenging.
Even in the realm of writing, when I started writing, I was writing poetry, then I moved in prose poetry, then I started writing short autobiographical essays, and I challenged myself to write fiction in third person, to write fiction, and so even if you stay within a certain form, writing, for example, hopefully you're trying new things. I mean, I think it's always a delicate balance between exploiting your strengths, but not getting so stuck in what you think or hope you can do well that you don't risk doing something new and maybe not doing it so well.
Yes. And then the other thing that I think we even, I've been doing music for a long time, but I'm still always trying to find, Danielle and I talk about this all the time, a way that we can support ourselves and still continuing, to do art the way we want to. Like it's a luxury to just be an artist, but we also have to provide for ourselves. Something wonderful happened for you with The Bill from My Father.
Right, the Bill from My Father was my 5th book, and My Avant-Garde Education is my 6th. So The Bill from My Father came out in around 2007.
And I believe it might be turned into a film.
It might be. It's
actually.
I hope. But I was very lucky in that it got optioned before it came out. This chapter was read on This American Life, not by me, by somebody else, and it generated some interest from Warner Brothers. I never expected anything like that to happen. And they dropped the option after about 2 years when the stock market tanked. And then to my complete astonishment, a couple of weeks ago, they bought it again. Or by bought it, I mean they
Re-optioned it, yeah.
So, it's good money and it's nice, but unless it's made, it's not,
Yes.
the kind of life-changing amount of money.
Yes. And then in terms of your visual art, what's happening now in that area?
Well, I'm trying to balance teaching. I teach writing with all of that, and I travel often to teach writing.
Yeah.
So I continue to make visual art. I had my first show in Miami, actually a couple weeks after my last book came out. What I need to do now is I've set up my house in such a way that there's work around that represents various bodies of work, and I need to have, they call them gallerists now instead of dealers, which is considered sort of crass. So I have to have a gallerist or two over, and try to get at least the work out there in the world. You guys were talking earlier about not wearing the self-promotion hat very well. And partly it's that it's intimidating to have what's often strangers over to your house to look at the work and sort of, try to interpret what they're thinking about it. But also, it's hard because I've been so productive in the actual making of the art that I don't want to stop.
Yeah.
To stand back and be self-conscious and worry about what other
It's
people
like
are going to
switching
think.
gears, and
Yeah,
then you because when you're on a roll as you are, because I've been to Bernard's house, and if you want to feel like a slacker, you should go to his house. There's art everywhere, and you're just so productive. But it must be difficult to suddenly switch gears and have to go into promotion mode because you want to keep that momentum going.
Right. It's also, this is not about self-promotion so much, but it was very strange after, 25 or 30 years of making a life as a writer and being lucky enough to have, several books out and that sort of stuff, and teaching. To decide to do something else, especially at an older age, because I think my fear was that people were going to think, "Oh my God, Bernard just has decided he's going to be an artist now,"
And some people do have that bias. Yes.
Yeah, that somehow changing your focus implies that you're a dilettante, that you're not serious. But I studied art. I wrote about art during the time I was writing fiction and nonfiction. And, I did, I was self-conscious about it, but primarily the urge was so strong that in the end, I didn't care what anybody thought because I was having such a good time exploring it.
And that's the key.
Yeah.
And would you say that were you doing art before you were writing?
I went to Cal Arts. I got my master's at Walt Disney School, which at the time was the most avant-garde art school in the country. So there was a lot of conceptual art, performance. It was a period of time where people were saying, erroneously, that painting was dead. Nobody's going to paint anymore. And I was very zealous about conceptual art. There were great teachers there. And so the last time I made art in a concentrated way was at Cal Arts during the time I was getting my master's degree. And literally a week after I graduated, because I was working with language in my conceptual art, I thought, why do I need the physical components? I'd always been a reader, and I decided, what if I try to write poetry? And in a sense, writing is the sort of most refined form of conceptual art, because it doesn't exist in an object, which was part of what conceptualism was about. But it seemed that was also a time where I thought, oh my God, I've lost my mind, to try this after spending 5 years getting a degree. So, I guess this new shift to visual art has a precedent back then.
Yes. I think it's fascinating. And okay, so little fun fact. So your brother Gary, not the Gary Cooper, but Gary Cooper, who was a swim instructor at UCLA, and I guess taught famous people such as Tony Curtis. Paul Newman. You saw
Yeah.
Paul Newman in a Speedo?
I don't think I said the Speedo.
Well, you never said that. I just imagined. I was hoping that you may have some pictures.
No, I did meet Paul Newman and Tony Curtis and Jamie Lee Curtis. My brother, I think my parents forced him to take me with them because, that way I'd be watched during the day. But,
Goodness.
I had a sense that they were celebrities. I was still too young to be too awestruck by it. But it was, to think back on it, sort of an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. Regions of making a life in the arts require a tolerance for doubt, failure, endurance, and continually challenging oneself about the direction and excellence of his or her own work. And I think that's fantastic because failure is a tough one. Doubt is always there. And oddly, when we feel most confident, it's like workshops sometimes, like Andrew will probably vouch, just like sometimes I would bring in something that I'm like, now this is a great one. And people in the workshop would just kind of like, no, that's not like up to the standard of what you like. Sometimes feeling confident doesn't mean that you're doing as well as you think you are.
And vice versa. Sometimes
And
when you
vice
feel
versa.
you're just, like you have to grit your teeth and show people something that's
Yes.
awful, you're surprised by the sometimes unanimous sense that it's successful.
Yes.
And which reminds me, in a sense, of this odd fact of making art, which is that it kind of isn't the artist's business to judge. I mean, it's irresistible that one is making judgments all the time. I also, I've taught for years, and I talk to my students a lot about doubt, because if you read deeply into any writer's writing about the art of literature, you find that there are plenty of people who are racked with doubt. I mean, Joyce Carol Oates, who's one of the most productive, renowned writers in the country, wrote a brilliant essay called On Failure, in which she talks about this idea that you have to feel like you may fall far and hard, because that indicates that you might be doing something really brave, and that it's a necessary component
Yeah.
of doing something good.
Yeah, and I hope that's inspiring to everyone here. So I think we should go out there and risk failure, risk being foolish. And I would like to thank Bernard so much for being with us today and inspiring us. And we will be back with Leopold, who's going to introduce us to a bit of daytime drinking, Rio style.